Today, we're going to start the rebuild of the 4-post planer from the bottom up. This is a fairly typical part. What I'm going to want to do is, wherever it's rusty like this, I'm going to clean these up first. We're going to use Super Clean because it's a really good cleaner and a really good degreaser. I have two versions of it here. This is like a foam. So we're going to scrub these down, get these as clean as possible with the Super Clean, and then rinse them off real good. And then I think I'm going to soak these in rust remover, get rid of the rust, and then we'll lightly sand it until it's ready for paint. And then we're going to have to find matching paint for it. But on some of them, like this part right here, needs painting on both sides. I'm going to guess they're all that way. I believe this is the only one that's got like a dent in it. Yeah, 2 dents. I'm going to try pounding those out. Yeah. I mean, they don't need sanding down to bare metal, except around where the rust is. But they are definitely going to need sanding, priming, and repainting. So I'm going to set up some cardboard or something here and roll up my stool and get these cleaned off right away. So I'm just going to spritz these down real good. Yeah, these are filthy and rusty. And I'm going to clean them with a maroon Scotch-Brite. That will be kind of like my scuff coat for repainting these. I'll probably have to do further sanding. These are about 320 grit, and I'll probably take this to about 400 grit before I paint them. And I'll be doing a separate video on color matching paint for old machines like this. I believe this planer is from right around the beginning of the Clinton era, so mid-90s. Yeah, this is going to work really good. I might not need to do a whole lot other than the cleanup with the maroon pad. I may need to soak the bottoms. Yeah, I'll soak these in EvapoRust overnight, and then we'll come back in and sand them again. I have some wheels for these. That's going to be a pretty cool feature when we assemble it. I'll show you my plan for putting those on nice and strong. So this is going to be the process. Anything that even looks like dirt, if I rub it long enough, it'll come off. So I'm getting rid of the majority of the rust right away. But like I said, I'm going to be dipping these in EvapoRust and sanding them to 400 grit before painting them. And after painting them, you really have to let it sit. With enamel like this, you really have to let it sit for, I'm going to let them sit for like 2 weeks before doing any reassembly. It takes a long time for enamel to harden up. All right, it is the dead of winter, but it's about 35 degrees, so I'm gonna go out and rinse this off underneath the faucet, and we'll get going on the next one. I have the mounting holes marked, and I have some of them crossed out. Apparently it was difficult to find where the holes were from the underside. Last time this was assembled was 30 years ago, so, but I do remember marking these. So I'm going to be doing some sanding and stuff like that, so we're just going to remark them with a punch. All right, this is the last part that I'm going to be cleaning up today. Then we're going to get into a bunch of sanding and repainting. Well, we got to get paint first, but that won't take too long. It'll take a day. Got to run, what is it, 5 towns up the Mississippi River to get to the place where I can get the matching paint. Boy, did this thing get filthy. Okay, I put these in the EvapoRust last night, so the bottoms of these have been in here almost 24 hours, and I haven't been able to get back to them until now. So I'm going to pull these out of here, go rinse this off good with water, and then I'll take my heat gun and dry off that little gap between the 2 pieces of metal down there so it doesn't rust right back up again. And then all of this stuff should be ready for work tomorrow. Oh, that looks nice. Looks like a little speck of rust still on there, but that'll sand right off. All right, let's get these rinsed. The reason for the heat gun is water will get trapped between these 2 pieces of metal here, and it's just going to rust right back up overnight. This way, this is really hot now. That was 1100 degrees for about a minute, and that got it real nice and dry in there. So tomorrow I'll be getting off this glue, sanding everything up nice and smooth, and then we have that dented one. I got my ball peen hammer for that. Once that's done, I'm going to take the sander to the top of this, and we'll hand sand the rest of these. Should go pretty darn quick. And then we'll figure out the paint situation, and then we'll get to painting these pretty soon. Okay, now we're going to figure out what needs to be done with each one of these. Some of them are going to get scraped and then sanded. I believe all of them are going to get sanded with at least 2 grits. And I believe this top is going to get sanded at least around the edge and these sides here. And yeah, we'll do the underside as well, but we're not going to waste a lot of time on it. I'm going to show you the details of what we're going to be doing and what grits we're going to be using. But first, if you could take a minute and subscribe to the channel, it would really help us out a lot. First thing we're going to do is get the EvapoRust gel on this cross member and get that working for us, and then we'll set that aside and we'll deal with the rest of this stuff. I'm going to confess something here. If you've watched my videos, you'll notice that I hardly ever wear gloves. These are extra large gloves, and they are tight as all get out on me. I have a real hard time finding gloves that fit. So if there's anybody out there that knows of any gloves that are actually the size that they say, I'm guessing these are Chinese extra large. If anybody knows of any gloves that are actually a good size, let me know in the comments below, and I will definitely try them out. Okay, let me get this open. Well, so much for being a gel. That's not a gel at all. Great. It's just a little bit thicker than normal EvapoRust and way more expensive. Certainly is working now. Okay, I'll let that sit for a couple hours. Okay, back to the base parts. What we're gonna do is we're gonna start with 80 grit, which is this right here. And we're gonna take off any rust or any other imperfections. It's mostly gonna be rust, like this right here. And then once we have each piece sanded, we'll set it aside, and then we'll come back with the next grit, 100 grit, and we'll take the scratches that we made with the 80 grit out of there, and so on and so forth. We'll work our way through the grits. Once you get past like the 80 grit and the 100 grit, once you get past those, it goes a lot quicker with the grits above that. Until we get to finished grit, like 220, then we'll get the whole part. We'll get, well, this will come off with the 80 grit. We'll get the whole part and just lightly sand it with that. We don't want to take the paint off. We just want to put some tooth in the paint. Once that's done, any bare metal like that, we're going to prime it, and then we'll go through a couple of the fine grits to get that blended in, and then we're going to worry about the paint after that. We're going to want to match the color of this paint, and we'll do that in a separate video. So let's start with this one right here. We'll take some 80 grit to both this dribble mark and the rusty stuff. Oh, actually, that looks like it needs to be pounded flat. That's another thing. Any of the pieces that need a little bit of body work like this, we're gonna have to get that done first. So let me pound this flat, and this other one, I'll go through these and find any that need that work. That's probably the only two, this one and this one here. We'll just tap that flat with a ball peen hammer, and then we'll get back to this finish work. The ball peen hammer has a nice head for working with metal. I'm not going to be using the peen side. Hopefully I don't damage the concrete. And I have a little anvil on my vise. Yeah, I'm probably gonna run it over there just for this ear. And then I have the other ear as well. Yeah, that's kind of bent too. I wonder if they're all gonna be a little like that. This is a tiny little anvil, but there's not a lot of flattening to do. It's almost there already. Beautiful. All right. There's just a tiny bit of distortion on each one. Let me get that done, and then we'll get back to getting these sanded up. Okay, that flattened them up really nice. As good as they need to be. On some of them, it also chipped the paint. I'm not sure if you'll be able to see that or not. Well, now you can. And we'll be dealing with that in the next step. This part is tedious, but it doesn't really take that long. I could use an orbital sander, but I find that just a regular hand sanding does a better job. So again, with the 80 grit, I want to get rid of all of the bumps and chipping and all of the bad stuff. You don't want to try doing that with a finer grit. And the rust. A lot of the rust is going to be on the edges. The original paint on these is not a really good paint job. I just took off a bunch of blobs and stuff. We're not trying to make this a show car, but while I'm sanding, might as well take those off. This dribble right here is stain, and that probably goes back nearly 30 years to when I was in a one-car garage shop, and it was just so tight in there that I had to use the table saw for a bench, kind of like I'm doing now, and my tools would occasionally get stain and glue and stuff on it. I tried wiping it off when it happened, when I saw it, but I didn't always see it happen. Like I said before, we're going to try to get all of the rust off. You don't have to get it 100% off because we're going to go through a few more grits, but you want to get the majority of it off, enough so that the next grit will take it off. When I got to this part right here, it had so much rust and pitting on it that I started using the disc sander, and on the rest of them, I just hit the bad parts with the disc sander and then straight sanded with the sanding pad of the same grit. Now we're up to the top part. This gets metal on top of it up to, right in here somewhere. So only the sides and a little bit of the top show. So I'm gonna hit that with the palm sander and then go over it with the pad sander real quick. And I believe, I might just kiss the rest of it real quick, but it doesn't need paint at all on the bottom. Still not sure if I'm gonna paint it or not, but this doesn't require a whole lot of detail. And there you have it. I'm going to paint this inner part as well. It's just not going to look as good as the edges. And the edges themselves are not going to look perfect, but I think they're going to look a lot better than the original factory paint. Now I'm going to go over this with 100 grit, and all of these grits from here on in are going to go really fast. All I'm doing is taking off the scratch from the previous grit, so I'm not even going to show that. I will come back when I'm done with the sanding and we're ready to clean these up and get them ready for paint. I got it up to 180, and now I'm cleaning the part with lacquer thinner. I'll use 2 rags, get it nice and clean, and then we're going to get some primer on this and get some color matched paint for once the primer's dried. Look at all that dust. So we have our parts to 180 grit. Now I'm going to clean them off with some lacquer thinner and we're going to get them primed. This particular primer is a nice fast drying primer that'll go over rust or pretty much anything, but it'll go over bare metal, and that's what we need to do right now. So let me get cleaned up and we'll try to get 2 or 3 coats of primer on any of the bare spots, and then we'll go get some paint. Okay, it's been about an hour. Oh my, that came out really good. And like I said, I'm going to be hitting this with a real fine grit, just barely hitting it, and then we'll paint it with the final color. We don't have that final color yet, but I'm going to be making another video about that in a little bit. But for right now, oh yeah, real nice. Right now, I'm going to get these little carriage bolts blued. I'm not going to do it exactly like they say on the instructions. This is basically just phosphoric acid. It's got a couple other things in there as well. They want you to brush it on, let it sit, how long is that? Like a minute or something like that, and then wipe it off. I'm going to brush it on all of these, put them in here, let it sit for a couple minutes, then I'm going to brush it off or wipe it off, and then we'll do it a couple times until it's really nice and black. I think next time I do this, instead of getting bluing like this, I think I'll just get a gallon of phosphoric acid and do it that way. But for now, we're going to use this Brownell's Orpho Blue. Yeah, it would be a lot easier to just dip these in phosphoric acid. They don't have it at Menards, but they do have it at Home Depot, and you can get it by the gallon. It's nothing special. I believe it takes a bit longer for straight phosphoric acid to oxidize your metal, but I think it's worth it. So these are going to have all different times on them. So I'll just grab them out of there and add a little more where needed until they're all nice and black. And again, I'm not going to do the nuts. Well, actually, I might do the nuts. I don't know. You can get brand new zinc plated nuts. What I'm trying to do is get this stuff so that it's rust proof, and you can get brand new, a whole bag of them at Menards of the nuts for a couple bucks, but these cost like $1.50 a piece. So these are going to get reused, and I'll likely just replace the nuts and the washers. Yeah, that's what I'll do. Some of these have, some of these have a little bit of rust on them. The phosphoric acid will get rid of that. Got them all done, and I'm just going over things. Now you just need to kind of dry them in one swipe. You don't want to over wipe. And then we'll come back and do a second coat. We'll probably do a third coat as well. And then they'll be done. They're nowhere near as black as I want them right now, but they're going to blacken up a little bit as they dry out. And then the next coat will get them pretty nice and dark. All right, I'll let these completely dry. Now I'm hitting them with 4/0 steel wool, just burnishing them a bit, and then we'll put another coat on them, and then we'll do it again. And then we will have some nice oxidized carriage bolts. All right, these have been dipped and dried 3 times and buffed with 4/0 steel wool. Now I'm going to cover them in 30 weight oil. Really doesn't matter what weight oil it is. 30 weight's just what I had around. Get them all underneath the oil, and I'm going to let this sit for a couple days until I'm ready for them, and when they come out I'll just dry them off a little bit and buff them, and they'll be nice and black.